Did you miss our lecture with Barbara O'Neill live in London on the Wellness Way this summer? You can grab a copy now on my webpage, phillyjlay.com.
I mean, I was the 51st person ever to have been diagnosed with Langerhans cell sarcoma. I was the 5th person on the planet that had it at the time. There was only 5 people. Because I've got autism and ADHD and Tourette's as well, I've always been very different. I've never been able to mould in with my kind of peers. My tonsils turned to stone. They were calcified. The EMT surgeon of 20 years said that they were the hardest tonsils he's ever seen. He said he had to rip them out of my throat. He couldn't cut them out, he had to rip them out. So I got sent down to surgery to get Hickman line put in, which is a direct line into your heart. And so when they put drugs through, it comes out here. Instead of going into a vein and then having to travel around, it comes out right at your heart and it goes straight into your heart and your heart goes... After the cancer is gone, you're fighting chemo, you're not fighting cancer.
And chemotherapy is the most valuable, even more so than vaccines.
Yeah, well, it has been because it's been protected by the UK government. But the worst psychologically addictive and physically kind of addictive drug was the cyclazine, and that was because it was like heroin, and it was just an instant hook, and I turned into a heroin addict. The reason why they didn't want me to go to Spain was because of my depression and stuff. I was trying to kill myself through starvation because it was the only thing I could control. So they were like, well, no, you can't go on holiday because we're going to section you, sedate you and force feed you.
So a little bit of cannabis and giving you the munchies.
Yeah, a little bit of cannabis and the munchies made me put on like 4 kilos in like 2 weeks when I hadn't been putting on any weight for months. Right at that moment, I was a little miracle again because one of the consultants went, you're going to rewrite the medical books.
Deryn Blackwell.
Welcome to The Wellness Way with me, Philly J. Lay, a layperson's guide to your natural health systems, your very own NHS.
Hello, lovely people. Welcome to another episode of The Wellness Way. Today's guest I really wanted to bring on the show after I interviewed his mother, the astonishing Callie Blackwell, known as the Hope Dealer, after I interviewed her back in 2023. Her story was so moving, and we laughed, we cried, we cried with laughter, we laughed with crying. It was just unbelievable. It was a complete and utter roller coaster. And this was her story, but it was about her son. And I wanted to get his side of the story. We're seeing cancer rates, especially with young people, absolutely rocket at the moment. And I hope that this story from this remarkable young man, Deryn Blackwell, will give you hope if you know anybody suffering from cancer at the moment. Before we start the episode, I'm just going to roll a couple of clips of Callie.
And he said, I'll never forget his words. He said, Mum, throughout our many lives, our souls need to experience all there is to experience. And it's only when our souls are strong enough that they can take on their biggest challenge. This is my biggest challenge. I'm not coming back. Because I said, well, none of your other patients are taking cannabis, are they? And he said, I knew you were going to say that. And I said, and I'm going to keep saying it until you listen to me. I said, you've got 60 people out there who this could help. I said, my son's, this is not just him that this helps. And he literally put his fingers in his ears and he said, and he looked away and he said, I toe the party line. I don't want to hear it. I toe the party line.
Deryn, thank you so much for coming all the way from Norwich and coming on the show. It's just brilliant to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
What a roller coaster of a life you have had.
Yeah.
And I think we need to go back to your childhood pre-cancer, if you don't mind. Now, I'm going to put a trigger warning on this episode. And so what I invite you to do, Deryn, is I'd just like you to rub your hands together, pull them out, and form a box. Okay? And just close your eyes and home into that box and just visualize it. See every little detail of that box. Okay? And that box has got a key. But for now, I just want you to open the box and pop it on the side. And if anything gets too much for you, we're going to take it out of the body, put it in the box, and at the end of this episode, we're going to lock the box and send your key up to your guardian angel. All right, my lovely?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Take us back to your first memories of childhood.
So, my very first memory is it's being abandoned.
Wow, I'm just going to tap on that.
Yeah. So, and this is something that I've dealt with and I've had conversations with about, but my mum was a young mum and she was traumatized herself, troubled. Couldn't deal with me because I can imagine, obviously, I wouldn't want a kid now. And I'm 24, so this is let's say it would be me last year doing this. So I was about 2 or 3, I'd say. And I just remember getting out of this car and I was looking at this field, this empty farm field, and behind some trees, and then being told to close the door, and then the car just starting to drive off. And I remember the kind of panic of like, oh my God, I'm gonna be like, what am I doing? Like I was chasing after the car. And it only lasted a couple of seconds, and then obviously car stops, door opens, it's all crying and emotional and stuff like that, and then that's it. Kind of just that's it. The memory ends. So that's my very first memory, that I can remember,
Wow, we all have memories like that. I remember getting into fights with my mum when I was little, screaming, I'm going to leave home.
Yeah.
And she'd just go and open the door and push me out.
Yeah.
And it's not that parents mean it. It's just...
Oh, I can imagine. It's overwhelming.
Or children mean
it.
Being a parent is overwhelming. I think it was David Bowie who said, "Parents, they fuck you up."
Yeah. Yeah.
But they don't mean to.
No.
So take us forward a little bit further.
So, I mean, because I've got autism and ADHD and Tourette's as well. I've always been very different. And I've known I've been different in a way that kind of... I've never been able to mould in with my kind of peers. And I've always been kind of very mature for my age and all this kind of stuff. So I've very much been been articulating and kind of intellectualizing all of my experiences since I was like, probably 3 or 4. Before, when I had this moment of like, I am me is different to you, I've been like, okay, that's it. And it's just gone from there. And I don't know if other people have it, because looking at other people is very much like they just kind of seem just oblivious to kind of the actual stuff that's going on inside them. They could just enjoy being a kid. And I could never do that. So it was very much like I felt disconnected from everyone, apart from very few people, for basically all of my childhood. And I mean, my dad wasn't the best. I mean, it wasn't good at all, really. Like, there was abuse from that side. I don't like authority. And if I have a rule, I want a reason why the rule exists. And if I believe that that's a fair enough reason, like that's good enough, I will follow that rule to a T. If I don't believe the reason is good enough, I won't do it, because I'm my own person and I don't follow rules just because they're rules. I want, why is it a rule? And he...
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
There are rules. You don't go off with that strange man in case he rapes you. Okay,
exactly.
That's a really good reason.
That's the reason, yeah, exactly. And it was like, and for him, it wasn't good enough. It was do as I say, not as I do, and do as I say because I'm older than you. And it's like... And for me as a kid, it was very much like, I don't understand that. I can't resonate with that. That reasoning doesn't work with me. So you need to give me another reason. And for him, that was backchat. That was pig-headedness. That was being disruptive. That was just a trouble kid. Like that was met with his version of the corporal punishment, because he got the belt from his dad and I got smacked. But the way that it was done was in a way of kind of trying to explain that it wasn't actually just hitting me, it was discipline. And that was because it was always, I'd get smacked the same amount that I was old. So if I was 7, I did something wrong with 7 smacks. And it was always explained to me why that this was going on. And to me, as I've now got older and I've looked back, I'm like, that's still not a good enough reason. It's still not a good enough reason to like do that. So I would always fight it. I would always fight, and I would always like kick off and stuff. And I would be very like, no, I'm not doing this. It's not happening. So you can imagine that was kind of just a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing, a lot of, and because I can only equate it to my autism is like just with sensory issues and stuff like that. So surrounding food, it would be like if I was eating a meal, I was kind of like, okay, I might enjoy it at the beginning of the meal, but then halfway through, I just all of a sudden a mouthful goes, ugh, gross, horrible, sensory overload, don't like it anymore. It could be the best meal in the world at the beginning, but at the end of it, I hate it, and that's a neurodivergent thing, and he would just think that I was being like antagonistic or trying to wind him up or something. So it would end up being like, no, you're going to sit at this table until you finish your food. And it would be like, that was a regular occurrence for me, just kind of fighting over food, fighting over discipline, fighting over who has the power. And it was weird because it's like, it's a full grown adult trying to fight with a child about power dynamics instead of just trying to like sit and understand them. And I mean, there's snapshots of memories of me being pinned against the airing cupboard door by my throat. I was up and my feet were like this far off the floor, and he was screaming in my face and I was screaming back at him, and it was just like, and I was seven or so, and that was a regular occurrence, and it would always be like the most minor things as well. So it would be like, okay, if I made a mistake, for instance, like I rode my bike out in front of a car, and this actually happened. I accidentally rode my bike out in front of a car, and
it can be quite a big
problem.
Mistake.
Yeah, exactly. But that mistake is still a mistake, and you don't need to be punished for a mistake. You need to be taught how not to do it again.
Yeah, explain to her. And I'm sure that registered with you.
Yes.
There must have been fear that came up in your body, and you kind of must have gone, oh, I nearly got killed then.
Almost got killed, yeah. And my mum saw it, and she obviously had that panic reaction as well of like, oh my God. But then the way that they knew how to deal with kind of a disruption to the normality was this then form of punishment, which then obviously didn't really make sense to me either. So it was all just like fighting until pretty much the day I got ill, and then it kind of stopped for a bit, and then it carried on because it was like the only way that kind of dad, specifically mum, stopped, because she never really kind of did it anyway. She was just kind of, she would divert it to dad, which she's taken accountability for. She has been completely, and we've dealt with that. We've done the work and dealt with that. But dad, not a chance. So that's that was early childhood.
Quite emotional.
Yes.
Anything you need to put in your box? No. Brilliant.
No.
I know you've done a lot of work on this.
I've done a lot.
Callie has as well.
Yeah.
Did you know that 22 billion pairs of shoes every year go into landfill? I find that disgusting, and so does my sponsor, Vivo Barefoot, and they're doing something about it. And that's why the lovely people at Vivo have offered my audience an exclusive 20% discount off your first order with the code PJL20. You know how much I love my grounding and how important it is for your health. And because of Vivo, you can stay grounded all the time. Head to their webpage and check out their new grounding shoe entwined with silver to connect you to the earth, as worn by myself and Barbara O'Neill. So take us to that day that you find out that you have cancer.
So it was weird because, I mean, I can't really remember anything before going to hospital. I apart from a few days before, but that day specifically, I just remember being in that room, and then like I remember just before going to like A&E, and then going out to a meal, and then coming back and sitting in that room. That's pretty much all I remember, and then snapshotting to being in Adam Brooks in the ward when I was like, oh my god, like being left on my own, where the parents go and get they get told what's going on basically, and I was just left there. So
I mean, that in itself, I think, is actually criminal, that they take parents out for this conversation, but they leave a child on their own.
Yeah, just to
when
sit.
They have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, and it was bad. But the initial diagnosis was, I was just sat in this room, this like cold white medical room, sat on this hard bed, this hard examination bed, and at this point we'd gone to A&E to try and find out why my spleen was like the size of a small cat, because that's where all my white blood cells were. That's where my cancer was like pushing itself out of, was my spleen. So they were like, oh, why we got this spleen the size of a cat? So we're going to A&E trying to figure all that out. And then I'd already had a blood test, so we went to go and get some food. And that's when Mum got the call from the doctors going, you need to go back to the hospital because there's something in his blood. And that's all they said. And it's like, okay, well, so we then went back to the hospital, and then we sat in this room, and then like 3 doctors and like 2 nurses walk in and sit down in front of you, and you're like, at the time I was like, why is there this many doctors coming in? I wasn't quite sure at the time. Now I know, I'm like, okay, when there's that many doctors walk in, there's some bad news about to be going.
Yeah.
Like there's bad stuff about to be said. And they were like they just said, you got leukemia. And I was like, I didn't know what that was. So I was like, what is that? And I only knew it was bad because...
And you were 10 years old.
And I was 10 and a half, so yeah. This was
like,
it was like 2 weeks into the summer holidays between year 5 and year 6. That was it. I was like gutted because I didn't get my holiday. But at the time I was like, I don't know what leukemia is. I ain't got a clue. So I just said, I only knew it was bad because mum started crying and dad went silent. And it was like, okay, something's up. And I was like, what I said to Mum, I was like, what's leukemia? And she went, well, the only thing that she knew it was where she said it was cancer. It was blood cancer. And obviously hearing the C word, I was like, oh, shit. Like I started crying and welling up and like freaking out and like not really knowing what to do. It was kind of just all overwhelming. But it was overwhelming, but then everything sped up like super quick, because after the diagnosis is done, the plan starts kicking off. So they left, and I think Mum left as well when Dad sat and had a conversation with me and kind of explained what was about to happen, kind of gave an analogy about chemotherapy and cancer cells and stuff like that to kind of try and make me understand what was going to happen.
Huge amount to take in.
A massive amount, yeah. And literally, and I'll give him credit that it's still to like this day, the imagery that he was able to give me was like, okay, I can understand this. And it was because I played a lot of games at the time, and I liked like zombie games, and obviously you got hordes of zombies coming at you and stuff like that. So he was like, just imagine there's a door and there's loads of zombies on the other side, and you've got a big gun, you've got a big machine gun, and the cancer is the zombies, and the doors have now opened, right? You're gonna have to kill the zombies or you're dead. And
that is actually a fantastic analogy.
It's an amazing analogy. Yeah, it's really good. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And from then on, I was like, okay, I was just imagining this kind of.
You're on your own TV
I was like,
set,
I was just like killing all these zombies and stuff, and that kind of made me understand what treatment was going to do and stuff like that. Obviously, I didn't know what treatment was going to do, like physically to me, until like doctors started explaining it. But I get they go, right, we're gonna have to give you fluids and cannulas. We're gonna have to cannulate you because you might need some drugs, you might need some fluids, like you're really dehydrated. You're gonna need fluids, all this stuff. So they took me out of that room into a just a treatment room, and they started trying to put cannulas in the back of my hand. And before this, I was terrified of needles. I didn't even want to go and get this blood test because I was like freaking out. I was scared. I didn't like needles, nothing. I did not like them at all. And then all of a sudden I'm getting cannulas in the back of my hands and in my arms, and they're like, I'd had numbing cream on that takes like 45 minutes to work, and it had been on for 15 minutes. So it was just like, they thought it was all numb. Me, no. Straight in, just... So thrust straight in the deep end, like just thrown in the middle of the ocean. Go. Hate needles, don't like doctors, don't like medical stuff. Just all of it happening within 10 minutes. Like being told you got cancer, jab, jab, jab in an ambulance within like 45 minutes, half an hour. It was that quick. It was definitely within the hour, I know that much, because it was very, very much... I left that room and everyone was like, okay, this is like priority number one, VIP, get him sorted and then we can deal with everyone else in the thing. It was like, just get him out and gone, get him to Adam Brooks. And they ended up collapsing 2 veins in the back of my hand, so I actually had big lumps like this in the back of my hand, and they were still trying to stick cannula in.
Oh my gosh.
So they did like 4 or 5, I think it was like 4 or 5 attempts, and they got 1 cannula in, and they burst 2 veins. And that was hour 1.
It was 10 years old.
10 years old, yeah. Yeah, it should be out climbing trees and stuff, literally like 2 weeks before I was playing rugby. And then like just out with my mates and stuff.
I can't imagine the trauma that must have caused you. And it's one of the things that concerns me most about the cancer industry is there is no time. It's treated with such fear. It has been built up, say, cancer, fear.
Yeah.
Whereas I think you need to re-imprint that and say, cancer, wake up call. What do you need to do here, lovey? Because I'm not happy with your body. So let's work out what's going wrong here.
100%.
But that isn't how the system works.
No.
So take us forward from there, because, you know...
so then I get blue lighted to Adam Brooks, which is medical lot for just ambulance, sirens, lights, go. And...
Again, I'm sorry, that's trauma that is unnecessary for a 10-year-old boy. Yeah. It's going to make no difference. Now, you need ambulance lights if you're getting somebody to hospital after a heart attack.
Yes.
Cancer, what difference is it?
No, I wasn't going to die within the next 2 hours.
No.
It was because I didn't even start treatment till the next day. So I get to Adam Brooks and then sit in bed all night and go, oh, we'll get you surgery tomorrow.
So, oh my God, this is so frustrating to listen to, because everything they put you through to deal with, and then to leave you on your own in bed, where you must be thinking, am I going to sleep and not waking up?
Yeah, it is literally like you get cancer, thrust, ambulance, speed. I was because obviously in the ambulance I felt fine. The only things that I were having were kind of like, looking back, I know I was ill. You could see I was ill, everything. But for me personally, I didn't feel like I was like on death's door, which all the medical lot were like, you're basically on death's door. Like you're gonna die soon. Like if we don't do this, because my white blood count was so high. But for me, I felt all right. I was just retching and being a bit funny, and food tasted funny. Like I could walk, I still felt fit, I was still up and about, I was still like running around and stuff. I wasn't lethargic or anything. But they were like, no, we're strapping you to a gurney. You have to be strapped to a gurney while you're in the ambulance. Couldn't just sit in the chair because I was the patient, so I was strapped in the bed. And then they wouldn't let me walk to the ward because I was like, I want to walk. I don't want to get in a wheelchair. I don't want to be taken from an ambulance, put in a wheelchair, and then wheeled to a ward. I can walk. And they were like, no, get in the wheelchair. You're not allowed to walk. Get in the wheelchair. And I was like, fine,
so again,
whatever.
It's all of this trauma that you're putting on a child and the re-imprinting.
And forcing you to play a part.
Very ill. And therefore the mind, as we know, is a huge benefactor to how you feel physically. Is just shrinking, going,
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
being
even walk now.
Yeah, it's being corralled. Like, I wasn't even allowed. And I remember I still do now, I have this kind of visceral, like, I don't want to do this. Like, why are you making me do this? Because it was like, at the time, it was like, well, wheelchairs are for disabled people. I'm not disabled. Like, I can walk. I'm fine. Like, I can still be able-bodied. I'm still healthy. Like, why can't I just walk to the ward? And they were like, in their heads, they were like, you're so ill, you can't walk. But I could walk. But they were like, you can't possibly be walking because you're so ill. And it was like this cognitive dissonance in their head, kind of going, you've just been blue lighted here, you've got loads of cancer, like you can't be walking. But I'm like, I can walk. Like, you look at me, I can walk. And they're like, you can't.
So take us on to
weird.
the next day then. And the next day they started the treatment.
And that was when they started the treatment. Yeah, it was so I got sent down to surgery to get a Hickman line put in, which is a direct line into your heart. So it goes in here, in your chest, up into your jugular vein, and then goes down and just sits in, like, just above a valve in your heart. So if you see it on a scan, you can see your heart pumping, and you've got the valve kind of opening and closing, and it just kind of sits here. And so when they put drugs through, it comes out here. Instead of going into a vein and then having to travel around, it comes out right at your heart, and it goes straight into your heart, and your heart goes, boom, spreads everywhere. That's what it's for. It's direct line into your heart. So that's how they can put fluids and drugs and chemo and stuff like that. So that's why they put chemo. They put chemo straight into your heart, because of the central lines. That's where they go.
It's the pump of the body.
It's the pump of the body, exactly. So they're like, well, we'll put it right in the center, and then that'll pump it everywhere it needs to go. And I'd never had surgery before at that point, like, obviously, because I'd never even had a blood test or anything like that. I'd had nothing. So I go down, and they're like, we'll just give him, just have surgery. And I just remember waking up and having orange all over me, being orange.
Presumably that was iodine.
Yes, it was the cleaning stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's weird. But also, the night before, when I'd got to there, they had replaced the cannulas. They were like, okay, we need to give you a proper cannula. And so I had a phlebotomist, and she took that cannula out and put another one in, and I bled all down my arm. My whole hand was stained red for like 2 weeks. Could not get the blood out, because my platelets were so low, and it was just pouring blood out my hand. So, little cut, and it was pouring blood. And they were like, oh, shit. Oh, it was like, get cannulas, try and get the cannula in and tie it all up and bandage it all up and everything. So I had like blood-stained red hands with cannulas in, and then I had orange chest with like a line coiled around in like this see-through bandage cover. So I looked down, I had a hole in my chest and a coil coming out of my chest, and I was like, this is fucking weird. Like, it was just weird.
Really
Weird. Like, yeah, because and that was a massive cause of anxiety for me for the whole time, because they tell you if that gets pulled, you can bleed to death because it's in your heart. So, and it's in your jugular. So if they pull it, it then pulls out of your jugular, your arteries.
You're done.
You're done. 4 minutes. 4 minutes, you bleed to death because your arteries have been pulled open, because they've just they've put a tube into your artery and then plugged up the hole. So if you unplug the hole,
that's it.
It's it. You need to surgically quickly do it, or you're fucked.
And again, as a child, you could turn over, toss and turn.
Oh yeah.
When you were asleep, and pull
walking
this out.
with the stand things, I would always grip that thing, because if it fell over,
that was it.
I don't want it to pull.
Oh.
And those things aren't. If you've ever used one, they're not.
They're not stable.
They're not smooth. They're not stable. The footprint is tiny, and then the thing at the top is really weighted, so they're top heavy, and they got funny wheels, so they are easy to go over. And I was like constantly, like, just a massive source of anxiety the whole time, just going, don't pull, do not pull. I went back to school when I was like out of hospital and stuff, and there were kids trying to pull it, and so I'd like, having cancer, trying to fight these kids because they're trying to pull my Hickman line, and I'm like, you're gonna fucking kill me. And they're like, they just don't understand. They're like,
Yeah.
and trying to fight all that. So it's just like, it was ridiculous. But that was, yeah. And then they start treatment. And I remember the first drug I having was methotrexate. And it was an orange bag, orange.
Okay.
And for me, I reacted really well with chemotherapy, which was quite lucky. So like the first time I ever had a drug, I would be sick. It would make me sick. It'd be horrible. Second time I have it, fine. Absolutely fine. Like, I didn't really get sick that much until obviously everything starts compounding, and then you just get general nausea for everything.
Yeah.
Like everything you do, you just, ugh. But initially it's kind of like you get an initial bout of sickness from the chemo. It's like, it's just because it's poison. Your body goes, throw up, try and get it all out, try and get it out. Obviously it doesn't work. So then your body kind of, for me anyway, it kind of realized it couldn't get it out and was just like, okay, it'll just kind of deal with this. But I was in Addenbrooke's for about a month, I think. But the first 2 weeks was when I actually just weed out all my cancer. It was gone. I was cancer free within 2 weeks.
And that was because of the chemo, do you
Yes,
think?
yes. So from my with my understanding of the chemo is that it's like an atomic bomb. So the analogy I tell people now is like, you wouldn't use an atomic bomb if you were getting robbed, right? You just hit them, or you'd shoot them, or something like that, or whatever. The means to the attack. But if you've got an entire army, a country is coming to attack you, you drop a nuke on them, because it's like, okay, it's easy to do, right? You can get rid of your problem right there and then pick up the pieces later on. If you have a serious, like for me, I had a massive white blood count. I think that chemotherapy was necessary in that moment. After the 2 weeks, no, did not need it anymore. Once the cancer was gone and I'd weed it all out, because that's what it does. My kidneys and liver had processed it all the cells had died and been flushed out, and I was neutropenic, which is no white blood cells, or white blood cell count below 1, and it's usually meant to be around 8. So below 1, they were like, well, cancer's gone. It's gone. Like,
Okay.
and then the rest of it is to keep it away. And that's why they give you the chemo constantly as a slow drip almost. They give you like home tablets to take as a maintenance dose, and that for 3 years as a boy. It's 2 years for girls, but 3 years as a boy, because they can reside in your testicles. And so they just keep drip feeding you chemo for 3 years, even though you don't have cancer. You don't have cancer. There is no cancer in your body, but they keep giving you chemo.
And your body is being poisoned.
Yep.
Solidly.
Yeah, all the healthy cells are now being killed slowly.
And you're having to try and detox this. You're having to try and build healthy cells again. And the whole time for 3 years, you had to fight the chemo in order to rebuild your body.
Yeah, that's it. It's after the cancer is gone, you're fighting chemo. You're not fighting cancer.
Yeah.
And they say it's to keep it away, because if we stop now, it might come back and yada yada yada. But it's like, from what I understand now, is like, if I stopped the chemo after 2 weeks, when it had all been flushed out my system, which again they were like, this isn't seen, this is crazy. Like, they had a bed on PICU for me, which is pediatric intensive care, because they were like, your kidneys are going to shut down, your liver's going to fail, your heart's going to fail. All of the systems that your body uses to flush things out are going to fail, because we're going to pump so much stuff through them. And I was, right at that moment, I was a little miracle again, because one of the consultants went, you're going to rewrite the medical books. Because they were like, how have you just weed this out? Like, how have you just weed out all of your cancer? And
Do you think that was partly the analogy your dad gave you? That you thought you'd done your job, that you visualised, being in that game, shooting your gun and kind of going, okay, I've done it now.
And because I've always been very much like a visual in my mind kind of person. And it was very much that. It was kind of, I'll be okay with it. I'll be all right. And I'll still equate to this day, there was a kid, I won't say his name, but he was like less than 1. and he was.
I couldn't hear that, so I doubt if our audience
sorry,
could.
he was like less than 1,
Right.
and I was in the same room as him. So in the ward there was like just separate rooms, but within that room there was like 3 bed bays, or 2 or 3, and I was in this bed bay, and he was in like the bay kind of diagonal to me. So as I got wheeled through, I could see him. I was talking to his dad and stuff. And this was while I was left on my own when mum and dad got taken away to kind of say what treatment was going to be, what was prognosis, that kind of thing. And I was just looking at him, and I was seeing what he was doing. And he had nose tube. He had EKG monitors on. So he had like sticky. He had cannulas in his hands. He had a Hickman line with like, so normally a Hickman line has two bungs on them. He had 2, but then they have attachments that have 4 on them as well that they can attach to the bungs. And he had 2 of the 4 ones on. So he had 8 lines coming out of his heart.
Oh my God.
And EKG monitors, head bandage on. And he was just dancing and smiling and laughing and watching In the Night Garden. And I was like, okay, if he can do it, so can I. Because I'm 10 times older than him. Like, he's a baby. I can do this. And from then on, didn't complain. Like, not once. Because of him.
Yeah. And your mum actually tells a lovely story. Would you like to repeat it?
Yes, so I think I know what it was. It was so I'd never had any emotions really to other people. I didn't have sympathy or empathy or anything like that. And I just looked at him and I said to Mum, I was like, he must be in a lot of pain. Like he must be uncomfortable. Like that must be sad for him. And Mum just went like, what? What did you say? Yeah, because at that moment it's like I'd never seen anything to that depth really either. Like that kind of, it was literally like, well, it was life and death. It was that kind of black and white of like, okay, you can either act like that or you can die. And I mean, sadly, he did end up dying, but that moment stuck with me to get me through. And there's other kids as well that have left their mark on me. But yeah, from that moment, I was like, I'm not going to complain because someone's got it worse. There's always someone that's got it worse. And even all the stuff that's happened to me, I'm like, there's someone that's got it worse.
So take us forward now. They keep you on the chemo for 3 years, and then tell us the next part of your story.
So I never ended up getting to the 3 years. I got 18 months in, and 18 months in was when I got was when I started to have. I would say it was probably about 12 to 14 months in. I started to get like a pain in my throat. It would hurt to swallow. And my tonsils had started to like change. They were like, sometimes they would have like black spots on them. Sometimes they'd have white spots on them. Sometimes they'd be inflamed. Sometimes they like were like just weird. Sometimes they had like little ridges in them. Other times they were smooth. It was just changing constantly over the course of 6 months. And this is where I hate my consultant for, because she was looking at this every month. Every month I was going and seeing her, and she's going, oh, these are different. Oh, these are different. Oh, this is how I know they were different. I can't see my tonsils. Yeah. She was telling me this. She was going, oh, these are different. Oh, this is like she's a oncology consultant who had to go to university for at least 7 years past being a doctor. Like a doctor is like 5 years, 7 years to be a consultant. Plus, like,
and she's saying it's different.
And she's saying it's different, and she's not. And I'm on active chemotherapy, and I have cancer. But there's no alarm bells going off. She was just going on holiday all the time. I would see someone else or something because she's on holiday. And you're like, it's ridiculous. But you'd see these tonsils changing, and I had sore throat and everything. And then by the end of 6 months, it kind of got to the point where it was like, you just need to take these out. Just get them out. Like, if I'd been having tonsillitis for 6 months, they'd already been taken out.
They would have. I mean, I think that's a really dangerous route. You know, your tonsils are the end of your lymphatic
Yeah,
system.
it's a second major point.
You know, they are there as a detox
Yes.
mechanism. And if they are changing, if they are inflaming, you know, Western medicine goes, well, we'll just take them out. Well, where's the inflammation going to go then?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You've just taken out the little piece of the body that's helping get that inflammation out and telling you that there's something wrong.
Yeah. And I also, from what I understand about your immune system and the way that tumours work and cancers and stuff like that, and on what your immune system does to cells it wants to contain, my tonsils turned to stone. They were calcified. The EMT surgeon of 20 years said that they were the hardest tonsils he's ever seen. He said he had to rip them out of my throat. He couldn't cut them out. He had to rip them out.
Oh my God.
Because he was like, they were just stone. They were just little pebbles. They turned to calcium. They turned to bone. And all of the cancer cells were contained within that.
Well, that's very interesting because the body tries to hide the cancer. It brings the cancer together in a lump somewhere in the body, you know, and that's why we need to take a serious look now at biopsies and whether you puncture, you know, that lump of cancer cells and let them just float and spread around the body.
Yeah.
But they were ripped out.
They were ripped out,
And then you had your next diagnosis.
And that was, and that was after at least 6 weeks, I think. I swear it was longer. Because they didn't know what it was, they were like, we haven't got a clue what this is. They got slices, like tiny little, like for microscopes and stuff, just slices of it, and sent them around the world. All around the world, Australia, Canada, America, like down in London, just anywhere that there was a research lab, my tonsils went to try and find out what the hell this was. Like, what is this?
And what was it?
It was Langerhans cell sarcoma, and it was found by some woman in London. And she was like, yeah, it's this. And she was like,
okay, so can
rare.
you explain what that is? Because it's incredibly rare.
It is.
And your mum wrote the book, A Boy in 7 Billion, because it is so rare. And it's also, you are a boy in 7 billion because nobody survives from this.
No.
So...
yeah, it was, I mean, I was the 51st person ever to have been diagnosed with Langerhans cell sarcoma. And I was the 5th person on the planet that had it at the time. It was only 5 people. And I was the only one that had leukemia before Langerhans cell sarcoma. So the little bit of research they do know is that if you do get Langerhans cell sarcoma, your genes and your DNA is altered in a way that you're more likely to get leukemia afterwards.
Okay.
So I got it the other way around, which they're like,
how does that happen?
How? One, it's so rare, and how usually the other one causes it's gone the wrong way. And yeah, because I had that the wrong way, that made me the only one ever. It made me the only one at all. And there is so little research on it that they were like, well, the only thing is that they both come from the bone marrow, and there's like one genetic marker that's the same. That's it. It was like one like minute detail that is kind of the same as leukemia and Langerhans cell sarcoma, that they were like, we're thinking of treating this as a relapse. Technically, it's a second cancer. Technically, it's a completely different cancer. Technically, it's another cancer, but we're going to treat it as if your leukemia has relapsed. So that's why they then did all the chemo, the radiotherapy and stuff. But I still don't have any knowledge on it. I don't have a prognosis. I don't have because with leukemia, they say you've got 3 years of treatment, and then if you're still cancer-free, 5 years after the 3 years has ended. So from diagnosis to after 8 years, you're good. Like you're like 50% less chance to die.
Yeah, the
Something like
statistics
that.
for chemotherapy,
Yeah.
again, something that has always troubled me. That you only, they consider it to have been a huge success if you live longer than 5 years,
Longer
if
than 5
you're
years,
cancer-free for 5 years.
Yeah.
But when you're 10, 12, 14 years old,
Yeah.
it ain't a great prognosis, is it?
No, they're like, okay, so I can die at 16. Great.
Yeah, no, I know. And then it's not their problem. They've cured it, which is
they've
why
cured
actually,
me,
chemo, the success rates are ridiculously small.
Yeah, because they don't count it.
Because it's just not counted.
Yeah, you get cancer 10 years later from radiation exposure. Oh, well, you must have been exposed to some radiation recently, not the chemo, the cytotoxic drugs that were altering your DNA, and the radiotherapy that you took that was literally like firing bullets at your body and stripping away cells. That didn't cause it in the long run. They don't say that.
No.
And that's ridiculous.
So, I want to now bring you on to some of the other medications that you had on top of the chemotherapy, in particular anti-sickness drug that you were given.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. I took this drug once and I had a terrible reaction, and I ended up in hospital from it. And I've been to a doctor who's given it, and my head spun round and got stuck. And I was shaking. And my dad had Parkinson's. So I kind of thought I had Parkinson's because I looked like my dad, and went into this huge panic attack. And then eventually, so which drug
so it
was your worst reaction to? Was that?
It was cyclazine. It was definitely cyclazine. I mean, and it was because the worst reaction, I mean, the worst physical reaction for me mentally was ketamine. But the worst psychologically addictive and physically kind of addictive drug was the cyclazine, and that was because it was like heroin. It was like taking heroin, and I mean, like I say, I've spoken to people that have taken heroin, and we've compared kind of experiences, and they've been like, yeah, that's what it's like to smoke heroin.
So, explain what happens when you take it, because you get this hit.
Yeah, so it's the thing. They're meant to give it in a 15-minute. It's a 15 ml, and it's meant to be given over 15 minutes as an infusion. That's to stop this effect. But because they're defunded and there's not enough nurses and not enough time, they just do it quickly. And it's just total kind of euphoria. You get tingling, fizziness, kind of, you get spaced out. My vision went blurry, like I couldn't see, I couldn't focus like on anything. I just kind of like mold. And the first time I had it, I was in a beanbag, and I was 12. And they come in and just give me a hit of heroin effectively at 12 years old. And I'm like, this is good.
This is really good.
This is really good, yeah. And from then on, instant hook. And I had that continuously until I was put in the hospice. And so this went from Addenbrooke's, when I was having my intensive chemotherapy for the bone marrow transplant, kind of, they call it conditioning.
How apt.
Yeah, so they're conditioning your body to have no immune system. Yeah, so during conditioning, they were giving me that, and it was just an instant hook, and I turned into a heroin addict. I would shout at nurses, I'd get angry, I would lie about feeling sick, I would lie about feeling ill, I would lie about being in pain, and also I would like be physically in pain from not having it because of withdrawals, that kind of thing. You've got like the psychological pain of like not having it, but then you've also got the physical kind of, I've got a gut ache now. I've got a gut ache because your brain's telling you you're in pain to have this thing to make you feel better. And they ended up bringing it, I was meant to have it every 8 hours. They ended up bringing it down to every 6. And then by the time I was in the hospice, they were just letting me do it myself.
And basically you'd moved to the hospice because they'd given up.
They'd just given up everything, yeah.
They had put you on adult doses of chemotherapy. now they've moved you to a hospice.
Yep.
And you were allowed to just inject yourself?
Pretty much, yeah, because they were like, he's going to die. Like, we know he's going to die. And this started in the hospital, actually. Know he's going to die. It's just, if this gives him comfort, this is just obviously what's going to need to be happening. And it was just kind of, it was giving me that kind of 15 minutes of respite in the day. And to me, I don't have any qualms with that. Yeah, it could have been a better drug. It could have been a better system. Could have been a better anything. But like that, I'm glad they did that. But at the end, it was necessary. I would have been way more glad if they'd just had never got me addicted to it in the first place.
Yeah.
But at the end, it was like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, they were just letting me inject myself. So so instead of going from 15 minute infusion, it was plug it in straight into my heart, give it to me, and I would literally just go try and squeeze as hard as hard as I could to like push it into me, and to try and get that hit as quick as possible, because that feeling only comes from when you've done it too quick. And that feeling is also accompanied by massive tachycardia, which is also a massive increase of a heart attack. That's why they don't do it like that, because you can literally just heart attack straight away.
But I presume at this point they thought you were going to die, so why not die of a heart attack?
That's why it's like,
if it gave you some comfort.
Yeah, and my body was pickled from the amount of drugs I'd had. I mean, I'd had ketamine, I've had morphine, I've had cyclazine, I've had hundreds of different drugs up to this point where I'm like, just give me anything. Like, it's just another thing. Like, it doesn't bother my body anymore. My body was just pumped full of drugs the whole time. It was just, oh, let's add another one. It's not going to do any damage. It's just, this is my normal routine. Yeah. So yeah.
And then one day, your remarkable mother bought another drug in. Now, a natural drug. Now, at this point, Callie says that she was looking at natural remedies. So she was looking at various herbs and everything and bringing them into the hospital and then the hospice. And the doctors were kind of quite scathing of her, to put it mildly.
Dr. Death.
Yes, Dr. Death.
Dr. Doom.
And if you haven't listened to that podcast with Callie Blackwell, please go back and listen to her side of the story of this. But Dr. Death was a very nasty character in your life who was very scathing about what your mum was trying to do. But one day she bought you a new drug, but a natural one rather than a synthetic one, called Cannabis.
Yes. Yeah. Lovely little plant.
Lovely little plant.
Yeah.
So tell us what happened, because you have a really remarkable story as to that first hit of cannabis.
It was for my mental health. So because I was sent to a hospice and because I knew that I had 3 days left to live, I was given 3 days. I knew that I was going to die. This was where I was going to die. I'd actually fought not to go to the hospice because I wanted to die in hospital because that was my safe place. So I was like, okay, I knew this was happening. And for the first 2 weeks, kind of nothing happened. I was just like, I got a temperature and had do not resuscitate forms done, and like, so no treatment was given when I had these temperatures. I just kind of just left. Just make sure he's comfortable, all this kind of stuff. And I got to a point where I knew that I was being spaced out from the morphine and the drugs that they were giving me. And my one stipulation in my death kind of plan was I wanted to experience death sober, or as sober as you can get without being in pain. Like, I wanted to see what it was like. You only die once. So in me, it was a scientific endeavor. It was like, okay, what is this going to feel like? What's it going to be like? What is the experience going to be like? I'd read about DMT and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, I want to see what this is like. I'm curious.
Want to look it in the eye.
Yeah, I want to face it and go, okay, that's what you are.
And you had no fear of death at all, did you?
No, not after that. No, not after this. Like, I had a deep feeling of kind of thinking that I was going to be all right, and I've always said that even if I die, I'm all right because I'm not in pain anymore. Like, I'm all right. You're always going to be all right because when you die, you're all right. So at the end of the day, you're always going to be fine.
Yeah.
And that just stuck with me through and through. It was just like, okay, I'll be fine either way.
And I think you explained to me earlier that when you first took that hit
Yeah.
of cannabis, that your addiction
Just immediately went.
just went.
Yeah.
Disappeared.
Yeah, disappeared completely. And I mean immediate, in between doses. Because I'd had a dose of the cyclazine and then kind of was freaking out. Wasn't really working because, again, like I said, the cyclazine was every 6 hours and the effects of it was lasting 15 minutes at most at this point, because my tolerance was so high. So there had to be something else. There had to be something else to satiate my anxiety and my horrible feelings I was having. So then that was why Mum got the cannabis, was to kind of chill me out. But I had that dose and I had this warm, after about 15-20 minutes, I had this warm kind of blanket go over me from it was like a head to toe scan. And it's like if you watch Star Trek or something, you got going over your body. That's what it felt like. It felt like this kind of methodical scan of my body. And then it felt like a blanket was put over my shoulders and it was like nice and warm and cozy. And that feeling lasted for hours. And I was like, okay, I'm getting the exact same feeling. It's just not giving me the tachycardia. It's not giving me the kind of heroin feeling. It's giving me the comfort that I wanted, because the reason that I was doing the cyclazine like that was not because I wanted to be spaced out and spangled. It was because the feelings of the spaced out and being spangled and that it was comforting, it was warm, it was cozy, it was safe, it was an escape. And so that was giving me the same feeling. It was like, I don't need it. I don't want it. The nurse came in and had the cyclazine, and she was, at this point, I'd had them well trained, and you could tell because she was like kind of jittery. The nurses were jittery coming in to give it to me because they were like, they don't want to anger me or frustrate me or anything like that, because it was like,
yeah.
And I just went, no, I don't want it. And it wasn't even a conscious thought. It just came out of my mouth that I don't want it. And I was like, and I didn't even think of anything of it. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think, why did I just say that? But Mum kind of went, the nurse looked at her and they were like, what?
Yeah.
What? And she was like, just go.
Just
get out. Yeah.
Before he changes his mind.
Yeah. And I never had it again. Never had it again. And I've still got my box from my hospice with all my morphine, my cyclazine, needles to take it, syringes, flush in. I know how to do it. Not once have I thought, I'm going to have a go. As someone who is addicted to heroin would, as soon as they see heroin, they're like, I'm going to have that.
Yeah.
I can look at it and go, don't want it.
Don't want it. And the thing is, you talk about it being like a heroin addiction. And you said if you were on the streets, you would actually have killed to get the money.
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, I would have.
You were that addicted.
Yes.
You were incredibly rude, I heard, to the members of staff at the hospital, because it was an addiction. As heavy as heroin.
Yeah, it was. It had the same reactions and it just gone immediately. Yeah, no physical reactions to a come down. Nothing. It was like I had the dose wore off. I had cannabis and it just took over. That was it. There was no withdrawals. There was no panic. There was no getting angry that I couldn't have it anymore. There was no, I missed that. Just it was like I'd never had it. It was like I'd never had it. Just gone. And I was like,
a lot of people, there's been, there's beginning to be a lot more research about cannabis and the different cannabinoid systems, and it's a whole big
it's a whole thing,
scientific area that is just opening up really to the world. And we've almost come to the end of the hour on the show, and it's been fascinating, but we haven't touched this whole system
no, it's so big
that I want to touch. So I'm going to ask you if you'll come back on the
of
show,
course.
because I know that we've got at least an hour, if not two,
Yeah,
to
easy.
talk about this system. And you are one of the most intelligent, informed people in the world today. Especially with the growing of it.
Yeah.
You understand the plant.
Yeah.
And you've lived with the plant, and the plant has saved your life. Would you say that that's a fair statement? The plant has saved your life?
100%. And it has changed and saved my life more times than once. So
I'm going to finish this episode just by talking about how your mum was bringing the cannabis into the hospital, and you were beginning to get better and better and better. And she obviously couldn't tell the doctors what she was doing. It was illegal.
yeah.
You told me that your nurses were quite, not understanding, but they did turn a blind eye, didn't it? Because
Yes.
they thought you were going to die.
They were like, look, if this works, I don't have a problem with it. If this is what makes you feel comfortable, that's fine. I learned very quickly hospice nurses are not the same as hospital nurses, and the hospital nurses that knew me, they were on board. They were like, yeah, keep going, like, we don't care, because they knew me, they saw my story, they'd been with me throughout it. They were like, good for you, like,
do whatever
you need to do. Yeah. And so some of my consultants were the same, because they were like they were North Indian or Spanish, so they were like, they had that kind of background of them as well, of plant medicine and Ayurvedic healing and stuff. So they were like, yeah, keep going, do whatever you're doing. Don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. I don't want to know, but keep doing it.
Was it Dr. Death who put his fingers in his ears?
No, so that was another consultant. That was a consultant in Addenbrooke's, actually, and he is still, to this, as far as I know, he's still my consultant. But he put his fingers in his ears and he said, I toe the party line. Fingers in his ears, turned round and went, no, I don't want to hear, I don't want to know, I toe the party line.
Wow.
Those were his words. And I was like, you know what, I've lost all respect for you. Like, I'm not talking to you, go away.
It's not even losing respect for them. But, we've heard a lot about that phrase over the last few years, follow the science.
Yeah.
Science is never set.
No.
Or never meant to be set. You don't follow science. You explore science. You find out what the new science is. Mm-hmm. You find out, but, there's a lot of money in medication. There's a lot of money in chemotherapy. Yep. They're not going to follow this science.
No.
It's just not going to happen.
No, and science is bought. Especially now, science is bought. If you you have to trace who's bought the science, who wants that study done, who bought the medical books, who funds the treatment, who does all of it, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's such a convoluted, complex, interconnected system that you kind of can't kind of. If you do want to continue being a practicing doctor, you kind of can't question this.
Well, this
because
is it.
You'd be like, you'll start to see it. The amount of nurses and doctors that that have been with me that have gone, I can't do this anymore. They've stopped doing oncology, or they've just stopped being a nurse altogether. And you're like, and that was because of me. And they're like,
yeah, we watched you heal.
Yeah, they watched me go through all of that, and it didn't work. And then they were like, I've seen this with other people, and it's killed them. And I'm like, it just doesn't work. Like,
it's the medical system.
Yeah,
it's built on a lie.
Mm-hmm. And like Mum says, it hijacks your empathy and your sympathy and your caring. It does, because you go into it, you go, no one goes and becomes a doctor or a nurse or anything like that and goes, you know what, I'm going to make money. I'm going to make loads of money off these dying and ill people. No, they go, I want to be a doctor because my dad was a doctor, or my mum was a doctor, or my family, or I was in hospital. I want to heal people. I want to help people. I want to learn about the body. As soon as they get into it, it's like, no, the drugs cost money, so you got to make money, and it's a business first and foremost. Yeah, it's a business model. It's not a healthcare model. It's a business model. And you're like, it's so stupid. And
chemotherapy is the most valuable, even more so than vaccines.
Yeah, well, it has been, because it's been protected by the UK government. The UK government almost bankrupted itself in the early 1900s buying the new miracle cure for cancer, which was radium. And it took out all of the loans that it could take out, and it basically wagered all of the gold that the UK had, and went, we're gonna invest in this. And so that's why the Cancer Act of 1939 exists, is because to protect an investment. It's an investment protection law. It's not anything else.
And then I always find it very strange that World War II broke out in 1939. Funny that. And what were they testing in the concentration camps? Wow, gases.
Chemotherapy.
Chemo. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they saw in World War One, they were like, maybe this works. And it's all come from World War One as well, because they had a massive surplus of this gas and these cytotoxic chemicals that were like, well, this costs money. We don't want to just throw it away. We're going to find a way to use it. And chemotherapy was discovered. You're like, okay.
And a doctor gets, I think it's about £6,000 every time he prescribes chemo.
Yeah.
It's a huge business model.
Yeah. Or they'll get, so in this country specific, like my consultant would get holidays. She'd be like, oh, do you want 2 weeks in Mallorca, or do you want 2 weeks in Barbados, or such and such? She'd have a meeting, and then all of a sudden she's got a month holiday. You're like, oh, so we can't lobby directly. She can't be given £1 million to take this drug, but she can have a nice holiday in the Bahamas, fully paid for.
No. It's a broken system.
Yeah.
And, the whole reason of me doing this podcast is to try and show people how this system is broken. I'm going to just go to the last little bit of your story, which is so wonderful. Your mother then went to your consultant and said, he's doing better. Can I take Deryn on holiday to Spain? And she had to fight for that.
Yep.
It wasn't given readily.
No.
In any shape or form.
No.
But she won. And she took you away for what was meant to be a week. But you ended up staying for a month, I think
it was a while, It was at least 2 weeks. I know that much. It was definitely... it was longer than a week.
Much longer than she had time allowed.
It was allowed,
and while you were in Spain, you were working very deeply with the plant.
Yes. I mean, I was given cannabis oil at that time. So before that time, I was just taking tincture, which was just the bud that was infused into vegetable glycerin, and I was eating the vegetable glycerin. Wasn't dealing anything with like actual pure cannabis, as I understand now. It was just an infusion, whereas that was like the full extract. The whole plant is concentrated into this oil of medication, and I was having a tiny amount on this cracker or this cookie or whatever I wanted. I'd just have it in the morning, and I'd spend 8 hours every day just smiling, chilling out, laying on the sofa, eating pistachio nuts. And at this point, the reason why they didn't want me to go to Spain was because of my depression and stuff. I was trying to kill myself through starvation because it was the only thing I could control. So they were like, well, no, you can't go on holiday because we're going to section you, sedate you, and force feed you. All of that, even though it wouldn't work.
So a little bit of cannabis and giving you the munchies.
Yeah, a little bit of cannabis and the munchies. Maybe put on like 4 kilos in like 2 weeks, when I hadn't been putting on any weight for months. And I went and got the munchies and sat in Spain in the sun and ate spaghetti bolognese and loads of cheese and pistachio nuts for like 12 hours a day, and got my vitamin D and got to go swimming in the pool and not be stressed out by hospice, hospital, doctors, treatment, prodding, needles, poking, all that. And I was like, oh, I can actually I enjoy myself.
And basically you worked with the plant.
And I worked, and it helped me. And that saved my life the second time.
It's a remarkable story, Deryn. It is remarkable. There is so much more to learn about the cannabis plant. As I said, it's early days. So will you do me the great honour of coming back?
Of course, yeah. I love talking about it. I'll come back as many times as you want.
It is a fascinating subject. But, if you've enjoyed this episode today, please go and listen to Callie Blackwell, the Hope Dealers episode. Go and follow. Where can everybody follow you and find you? Because you lost your main Instagram
I did.
account.
I got hacked. It's rare_kid_here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anywhere else that they can find you?
No, I mean, no, I'm just Instagram.
Yeah,
Find me,
just
easy.
Instagram. You'll
Yeah,
find
nice
him.
and easy.
Follow Callie Blackwell. Get the book, A Boy in 7 Billion. And then we will talk very shortly about the benefits and the systems of the cannabis plant. Deryn Blackwell, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Before you go, we all know the importance of journaling for mental health, and that's why I've updated my book, The Natural Wellness Journal, to help you navigate the path of self-healing. Available on phillyjlay.com, and if journaling isn't your thing, I've created an interactive ebook, The Wellness Way, Your Natural Health Systems, that will connect you to some of my greatest podcast guests so you can learn more and take back the power over your health. Thank you.